Leonard, and I'm a senior at Gonzaga University in Spokane, Washington. What you're about to watch is a summary/synopsis of my honors senior project. My project centers around gender inequality. More specifically, the different facets you can see gender inequality manifested in corporate America today. I'm an HR and law and public policy concentration here, and all of my classes have mentioned the gender inequality topic in some capacity. However, I wanted to know more, and I wanted to dig into 3 different areas specifically: emotions, compensation, and parental roles in the workplace. I picked these because men and women are perceived to differ in these areas. Doing research, readings, and hearing other women's experiences in all these different areas was very eye-opening to me, and I wanted to share it with everyone. Well, whoever's seeing this anyways. So without further ado, let's get into my video. Before I get into the main sections of my paper, I wanted to discuss the basis of my paper, and that is a book called You Should Smile More by the Band of Sisters, which the Band of Sisters are 6 female authors who at some points in their life, some of them even working together, worked at PepsiCo, which is really funny because that's where I did my internship this summer, or this past summer, last year, basically. And they all sat down and talked about their experiences and made a book out of it. And so they have a quote in their acknowledgement section that really sums up who this book is for and what the purpose of this book is. And it says, "This book is for forward-thinking men and women who are ready to take micro moments and advance women in the corporate workplace as equals." Like I said, I use this as a basis of my book, so a lot of the chapters really inspired the topics I talked about. And so I wanted to thank these powerful women for writing about their experiences and helping the whole world understand more about what it's like to be a woman in corporate America. The topic that I talked about in my paper is kind of a twofold. The first one was emotional stereotyping, and the second is this motto called "Being Like Bill." So in one of the first chapters I explored, it was chapter 23, and it was labeled "She's Too Emotional." And so this chapter highlighted how women are judged every day for their emotions at work. If they're too kind, they're too soft. If they're too assertive, they're seen as rude or cold. And if they suppress emotions, well, they're labeled a 5-letter B word. So women can't really win sometimes in the workplace. And it can be said that men do face a similar critique, but not as often as women and not with as many negatives. Then chapter 24 was called "Be Like Bill," and this highlights how women tend to hold themselves back, ranging from applying for jobs to applying to promotions to even negotiating something as simple as their salary. So within this chapter, the authors quote a study by Sheryl Sandberg, who found that men apply for jobs when they meet 60% of the qualifications, while women wait until they meet 100%. The Band of Sisters suggests that women should lean in, take up space, and be like Bill. In other words, act with confidence the way that men do. When I first heard this advice, I was like, this is empowering. And my internship I had over the summer was in a very male-dominated area. So I was like, this is perfect. However, I soon realized that this "Being Like Bill" motto is not the most progressive way and helpful way of thinking. So the first week of my internship, it was honeymoon bliss. It was super great, had the best time. I kind of disregarded what the authors had said about being too emotional and that to survive, I needed to have a male mentality. I was like, that's ridiculous. And one day, I went into a grocery store to sell in a display with my male coworker, And he had me try to do it alone, which I was already super nervous, and I felt like I didn't have all the information I needed, and I felt like I needed a day to prepare for this kind of presentation to a store manager. And so when I started selling a display in to this male store manager, he was so unhelpful in calming my nerves. He questioned my authority constantly. He would look over me to talk to my male coworker and kind of be like, should you help her? Like, get in here. And I thought I was doing great. For it being my first time, I thought I was doing great. And so I felt super defeated when he said, not today, about selling in a display. But to make matters worse, as I was walking away, the store manager was like, you tried your best and just today's not your day. But then he shifted his body towards me and uttered the words, I hope you don't cry about this later, and then let out a little chuckle. And I'm not a super sensitive person, but when he said that, I had a rage in me. I was like, this is not happening. And my male coworker was like, I've never had that happen to me. And I was like, some part of me is like, is it because I'm a girl and I look like I'm gonna cry or something? I was just super confused. So after he said that comment to me, I was really thrown off, and I was just went back to this chapter of being like Bill and kind of hiding my emotions and going in there and being tough, having a male mentality. And so I went into my next selling in a display, and I had that mentality, and I didn't take any little comments like that. And when I went into this next selling in a display, I just kept thinking, why do women have to act like Bill to be heard? Why can't confidence and leadership be encouraged in employees regardless of gender? While some advice from the Band of Sisters I continually go back to, like speaking with authority, I still felt when I went to this be like Bill mentality that I was playing a role rather than being myself. And inauthenticity in sales is really obvious. And so the second store manager, was a female, and she was like, you were pretty cold. You didn't have that warmth you had the first time I met you. And that's when I just found this being like Bill thing problematic. So when I was reflecting on this in the chapter I read, the real goal shouldn't be forcing women to man up. It should be creating a workplace where women don't have to change who they are to be taken seriously. Confidence isn't just a male trait, and it's time to start treating it that way. So moving on to the next topic I covered in my paper, I looked at compensation and more specifically explored the world of pay, which is often a taboo in the workplace. And especially when you throw in the gender pay gap, it becomes more of a taboo. So, like I said, whether you call it compensation, pay, wages, or paycheck, there's no denying that the pay gap still exists. Did you know that for every dollar a white, non-Hispanic man earns, a white woman earns 80 cents? Black and Hispanic women earn even less at 66 and 58 cents, respectively. And since 2020, the pay gap has only closed by 1 cent for most groups. I'm going to take a second and let that sink in. 1 cent. So I had to ask myself, why does the pay gap still exist? I know that's a huge question to answer, and there's probably so many different ways to explain it, and I might not be even hitting on the right answers. But according to the Band of Sisters, the wage gap exists for 3 key reasons. 1, women tend to work in lower paying fields. 2, women take career breaks for caregiving and or motherhood, etc. And 3, despite laws against it, pay discriminations persist. However, there was one major issue. Talking about pay is discouraged in many places, making it hard to advocate for fair wages. So if you take anything away from it, know that because pay transparency is not a big thing, there's no conversations happening for the pay gap to lessen. So I'm not an expert in compensation. I took one class and I knew I wanted to talk to an expert about it. So I talked to Dr. Bolshafer here at Gonzaga University. She's an MBA director and a professor of management at Gonzaga University. So let's hear what she has to say.
Women and girls are rewarded by saying yes.
Okay.
We've been taught this, and it's not just the United States. And if we ask for something, that is seen as a signal of negativity. So we're all taught this, and so the research definitely supports that both men and women do not like it when women negotiate with them. So the things that I encourage people to learn about is when you learn more about the salary, when you learn more about what other people are being paid, you can feel more comfortable asking questions. But the language for women has to be collaborative, being excited, say like any sort of language about being a team and like having that be a part of the explanation, whereas men do not get penalized for just saying it's got to be $5,000 more, and they don't have to give a reason.
After talking to Dr. Bolshafer about negotiations and how women handle negotiations as one area of compensation, I moved into telling her about chapter 18 in the book You Should Smile More, and it's called Mancentives. And it highlights another problem, which is workplace incentive systems, which are often designed with men in mind. And so I kind of wanted to talk to Dr. B about this, and I got her opinion on it.
At Gonzaga, we have to, for promotional items, or if we're buying things, we have to order from a particular website.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as what is offered there, it goes with trends, which tend to be more male, different things, golf tees and whatnot. There are no cute blouses. Here's a polo shirt. I'm like, so as far as those type of promotional, just swag, that's like a system that affects it. With other rewards, we have to have a diverse group looking at options or coming up with it.
Mm-hmm. After she said all this, during my own internship, the only options were a polo, golf tees, koozies. Where was, I don't know, a Lululemon gift card or a cute little blouse, something that I would be interested in, or to hear it would have been nice to hear someone in the company say what would you like? What would be interesting to you? I started to ask myself, so what's the solution? What can women do? And so both the Band of Sisters and Dr. Bolshafer emphasized 3 key takeaways. The first one is know your worth. First and foremost, research your salaries, understand pay structure, and ask yourself what you deserve. Second is encourage pay transparency. Pay isn't a measure of worth. Being open helps everyone. And if you ever take compensation and benefits with Dr. Bolshafer, that is a point she drives home. Pay transparency is so important, and pay should not be a taboo. When you are open about your pay and pay structure, your employees are happier, and 2, you have a better working environment. And lastly, share your stories. Women must openly talk about workplace experiences so future generations are prepared. Another topic I explored in my paper was this idea of superwoman syndrome. And this starts with talking about working parents, specifically how mom and dads are treated very differently in the workplace. I have a fun fact. Did you know that only 16% of people believe that moms with young kids should have a full-time job? Meanwhile, 70% of people think that dads should have a full-time job. And I was shocked reading that. 16% versus 70 was crazy. And I had to ask myself, why is there such a gap between mom and dads? Well, according to the Band of Sisters, working dads are often praised for being involved parents, while working moms are questioned for their choices. So, a dad leaves work early to go watch his kid's soccer game. What a great dad. Where a mom will leave early to go take her kid to a dentist appointment or also attend a soccer game. And the questions are you going to be able to get your work done? Or, oh, you're leaving work early to go to your children's game? They get asked more questions. And so society has moved past this idea that fathers must be the sole breadwinners and that moms should stay home. But yet, that idea still lingers. Even if we think we've moved past it, it still is lingering in society. So to kind of ask more questions about being a working mom, I turned to Dr. Pepper, who is a former journalist and a management professor now here at Gonzaga University. And she's also the Dean of Impact or Associate Dean of Impact. And I just want to know more about what it was like being a working mom. So let's hear what she has to say. Wow. Well, speaking of working in a toxic work environment, can you name a time when a boss, colleague, or any other professional has made a negative comment about you being a mother, or even just a woman in general?
Oh, yes. So many things come to mind when you ask that. There are the names that people call you: honey, sweetie, kiddo, lady girl, all sorts of just names that I feel are really trying to put you in your place and say, you don't belong here, you're just a little girly girl. So I experienced a lot of that, especially in that toxic work environment. As far as negative comments about being a mother, I find many of them are veiled in this: don't worry about that, honey. You put your family first. That's the most important thing. Don't you worry about this big, important job. You need to focus on those sweet children you have.
I still had more questions. Why do working moms face so much scrutiny while working dads are celebrated? And is there any way of leveling that playing field? Well, chapter 6 of the Band of Sisters introduces a concept called Superwoman Syndrome. It's this internal drive to do it all, excel at work, be the perfect mom, and never slow down. When people see a working mom juggling everything, they often say this phrase that can be so damaging: I don't know how you do it. I know you're probably thinking, damaging, isn't that a compliment? But it creates this impossible standard, not only for women in their current situation, but for future generations. And if you're a mom, you feel like you failed if you can't do it all. Dr. Pepper's story got a little more frustrating to me, and she brought up her husband being a stay-at-home dad.
I hear a lot of, how do you get that gig? Like, as if being a stay-at-home parent is an easy job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is probably the number one reaction I got from men. Not all men, obviously, a lot of men. And then women are just, you're so fortunate. That's incredible that he's willing to do that for you, which it is.
And then even with her being the breadwinner, she faced assumptions.
I once asked about a promotion and a different work schedule and was told, I'm not going to give you a different schedule just so you can spend more time with your family. And I hadn't mentioned my family. What I was asking for didn't have anything to do with my family, but the perception was that, oh, you just want a different schedule because you're a mom.
Wow. It was interesting that there was no mention of her qualifications, just assumptions of her being a mom when she walked into her boss's office. And so when she told that story, I kind of remembered during my own internship that higher level female managers had the flexibility to leave early for their kids, but lower female employees, they rarely left. Even if they could, they probably feared being mommy tracked and passed over promotions. I remember hearing a lot of my female coworkers say that by staying later and doing the job, one, they're getting things done for the company, but two, they're showing their loyalty to the company. And I just thought that was really interesting because never heard any of my male coworkers say that. And although a lot of them did stay later, a lot did leave early, and they weren't worried about being penalized. Like I did the last time, I always ask myself the question of, well, how do we fix this? The Band of Sisters and Dr. Pepper offered a couple solutions. The first being, acknowledge the struggle. No parent has a work-life balance figured out, so let's stop acting like they do and praise them for a job well done, no matter how it looks. Second, create more flexible work policies. So let's support more working parents, meaning moms and dads, with options that don't penalize them for caregiving or having to leave early. And lastly, we need to rethink workplace language. So appreciation for parents shouldn't be gendered. Good dads and supermoms should just be great employees. When I was thinking of another section for my paper, I knew I didn't want to do another chapter from the book because in a way to me that felt like cheating, like I wasn't doing any research, which I know isn't true, but I was talking to Dr. Pepper and she's like, you need to talk about mentorship and why it matters. And I was like, perfect. So I explored this topic of mentorship, and from what I found, it's a game changer in any career. And I think any professor in the School of Business will tell you that. Before I went down the mentorship rabbit hole, even though I kind of already was, I talked to Dr. Kim Gambrell in the doctoral leadership program, and she's actually the chair of it here at Gonzaga University, and she told me that there's a difference between mentorship and sponsorship. So mentorship is guidance and sponsorship is advocacy. So that kind of helped me understand, okay, women have a lot of mentors, a lot of guiders, but they don't have someone advocating for them. And that kind of helped me understand that 42% and 14%. She went further to describe mentorship as an intentional relationship where a seasoned colleague helps a junior colleague navigate a system they're unfamiliar with. It's about investment in success, in honesty, and opportunities. I then wanted to talk to Dr. Pepper, obviously, because she was the one that guided me to this topic, and she saw mentorship as essential, but also very complicated. She had a couple things to say.
So important to everyone, and women don't receive it as often as men, and women don't mentor as much as men, in part because so much more is expected of them in the workplace. They don't have time. There's a little bit of a queen bee. Women are mean to each other. And there's the men don't like to see women talking quietly in hushed tones. It can upset the balance for some men, obviously. I've seen that a lot in my career of having lunch with female colleagues and men coming to the restaurant and saying, they're with their mentors and proteges as well. But when they see the women together, like, what are you plotting? You're clearly plotting the overthrow. So we tend to hide the mentoring that we do. And, but I also think women who have broken through the glass ceiling say, I couldn't have done this without my mentor. So they really want to mentor other women, but because so few are at the top, there's a lot of mentoring to do, and not everybody has that kind of time.
This dynamic makes mentorship even more important. Without strong mentorship, women struggle to gain visibility and career momentum. So, in the words of Dr. Pepper, how do you find a mentor? The first thing is, don't force it. Asking someone outright to be your mentor is abrupt and inappropriate. So, Dr. Pepper suggested start small, invite them for coffee, ask for advice, and let the relationship develop naturally, like I mentioned earlier. The second thing is, it's okay to have multiple mentors. Women mentors help with social and psychological aspects of work, but research shows that white male mentors are often the most effective in pushing career development. So have your girls, but also, it's okay to have a couple guy mentors as long as you feel comfortable. And the last is look for sponsors, not just mentors. A mentor gives advice, like I said, and a sponsor will open that door for you. So to wrap it up, why does mentorship even matter? Well, mentorship leads to higher engagement and retention rates, stronger knowledge sharing cultures, more career advancements, and increased company profitability. That last one was shocking when I learned about it, but studies show that when there is more mentorship within your community, there is a better workplace environment made, and it creates more productivity, which leads to higher company profitability. So the question isn't just, do you have a mentor? It's, do you have the right mentors and sponsors to elevate your career? So if you don't have a mentor, go find one. I have been talking a lot about what other people think and what the books and research and people have told me about compensation, emotional stereotyping, superwoman syndrome, and mentorship. But where do we begin? Where do we begin to start shifting the mindsets that people have in corporate America? Well, I think it starts in universities, especially in the business schools. So, what can universities do to better prepare students for it? Before I have recommendations for what I think the university could do, I found that Gonzaga University, like many institutions, have a fairly balanced gender ratio among faculty and staff. But besides having professors who most of the time talk about their experiences if they've been outside of academia or bring in people who are out in the real world, what can the business school, what else can they do? So I thought that there should be more female speakers that come into the business program. Hearing from women who've navigated male-dominated industries can inspire and prepare students for the workforce. Knowing what's ahead is super powerful. There also is the opportunity to have some curriculum changes, so gender and workplace inequality courses. Professors should incorporate lessons on gender inequality, topics like pay gap, workplace behavior, and allyship, which honestly, a lot of professors already do, and it's important because both men and women need to understand these realities. I remember my freshman year, Dr. Pepper taught a weekend course called Gender in the Workplace, covering how systems could be designed to support both genders. And so imagine if that class was a full semester course, like what we could learn is endless. To wrap it up, if universities don't teach students about the inequities of the workforce, they're sending them in unprepared. Change starts with an awareness and begins in the classroom. So what do you guys think? What else could colleges do to help with the topic of gender inequality in corporate America and in the workplace? And that's all. I'm all done with my honors senior project. So obviously this isn't my whole paper, but I was not going to make everyone sit here for 2 hours and watch my video because that would be excessive. But before I'm done, I want to give a huge thank you to Dr. Schmidt for helping facilitate seniors projects for honors. I also need to give a huge shout out to Dr. Rebecca Bolshafer and Dr. Kem Grimbrell for being my interviewees in my project. And last but certainly not least, I need to thank not only an interviewee, but also my mentor throughout this whole project, Dr. Molly Pepper. So thank you to her. And with that, that's the last thing I'll ever do for Gonzaga Honors College. So go Zags!